So, what if the secret to hitting your biggest goals had nothing to do with more willpower, but everything to do with using brainwashing techniques on yourself? I know, it sounds a little crazy, but today we're going to break down a formula that talks directly to the part of your brain that really calls the shots. And this quote right here, it really sets the stage for everything. Just think about it for a second. Every single choice you make right now in this moment, it's either helping or hurting the person you're going to be tomorrow or next year or 10 years from now. That's the conflict we have to solve. All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start by tearing down the myth of discipline. Then we'll go meet the animal that's hiding in your brain and learn how to speak its language using something called the F.E.A.R formula. After that, we'll figure out where to aim that formula with the 4 gold pillars. And finally, wrap it all up by making your future self your #1 priority. Okay, first things first, let's just bust a huge myth right open. You know how we look at really successful people and think, man, if only I had their discipline? Well, what if I told you discipline isn't what you're actually seeing? Here's the secret. What looks like some kind of superhuman discipline is almost always a deeply ingrained habit. See, discipline is just the spark. It's that temporary push you need to get the engine turning over a few times. The real goal isn't to be in a constant state of struggle. It's to make success feel effortless, automatic. So let's redefine this. Discipline is not some personality trait you're born with. Not at all. It's just a choice. It's the simple act of choosing your future self's needs over what your present self is screaming for right now. That's it. But to really get why that choice is so incredibly hard to make, we need to dig into the science a bit. We've got to go inside your head and meet the one who's really running the show. Now, a really simple way to picture this is with the triune brain theory. It basically says our brain evolved in layers, and at the very core is the oldest, most primitive part, our mammalian brain. This is where all our feelings and our deepest instincts come from. That's right. You literally have an animal living in your head. And this animal makes most of your decisions. What you want, what you're afraid of, what you do without even thinking. And here's the absolute most important part. It doesn't understand your language. It doesn't care about your New Year's resolutions or your fancy to-do list. So that's a pretty big problem, isn't it? How on earth are you supposed to get the most powerful decision-making part of your brain on board with your goals if you can't just talk to it? Well, you learn to speak its language. And its language is all about vivid visuals, strong emotions, and tons of repetition. When you do this, you turn on something called the reticular activating system, or ARS. Think of it like a focus flashlight for your brain. You know when you decide you want to buy a certain kind of car, and then suddenly you see that car everywhere? They didn't just appear. You just told your brain, this is important, and now your ARS is pointing them out. We're going to learn to do that on purpose. And that, right there, brings us to the exact 4-step formula for communicating directly with that animal brain. It's a simple acronym, and it spells F.E.A.R. Yup, F.E.A.R. stands for focus, emotional involvement, agitation, and repetition. These are the 4 levers you need to pull to program your subconscious mind for exactly what you want. So here's the breakdown. Focus is all about visual reminders, like putting up a vision board. Emotion is where you make it real. You don't just look at a picture of your goal. You feel what success is like. What does it smell like? What does it sound like? Make it sensory. Agitation is about shaking up your routine. Move your desk. Wake up an hour earlier. Do something to signal to your brain, hey, pay attention, a new chapter is starting. And finally, repetition. The more you do this day in and day out, you are literally paving a neural superhighway, making that new behavior the path of least resistance. Okay, so we have this incredibly powerful F.E.A.R. formula, but an engine is pretty useless if it's not in a car, right? So where should we point all this energy? This framework is going to help you organize your ambition so you're building a life that's actually balanced. So when you're using this method, what are the core areas of life that are going to give you the biggest bang for your buck? Well, it really comes down to these 4 pillars, the 4 Bs: brain, body, business, and behavior. Think of these like the 4 legs of a table. If one of them gets wobbly, the whole thing is going to come crashing down. These are the areas where applying that F.E.A.R. formula will make the biggest difference. And here's why they work together. Your brain, that's the operator. It's your mindset, your learning, your strategy. Your body, that's the vehicle. It's your energy, your health. You're not getting anywhere without it. Your business, which is your career or your finances, your impact, that's your mission. And your behavior, your habits, your ethics, that's the steering. It determines which direction you actually go. If you neglect any one of these, the others will suffer. It's a system. And that brings us to the final, and honestly, the most important piece of this whole puzzle. We've got the how with the F.E.A.R formula, we've got the what with the 4Bs, but we still need the why. What is it that's going to fuel this entire engine? There have been these huge studies on success that followed people for decades, and the results were just crystal clear. The single biggest predictor of who became successful wasn't IQ, it wasn't luck, it was the ability to delay gratification, to choose the future reward over the instant one. So you have to see it this way. Every little decision you make, to hit the snooze button, to eat that junk food, to put off that important task, it's an act of neglect. You are actively neglecting the person you want to become. Your success today is a direct reflection of how well you're treating your future self. So here is something you can do right now. Today, start a journal, and every single day just ask yourself, on a scale of 1 to 10, how connected do I feel to my future self? That's it. Just by bringing awareness to it, you start to gain control, because you really can't manage what you don't measure. And that leaves us with one last question. This doesn't have to be some massive, life-altering change you make overnight. Just ask yourself this. What is one small thing, just one thing, that you can start doing today, that the you of the future will look back on and be genuinely thankful for? That's the starting line.